You're listening to Simply the Best Sports Take, the best podcast breaking down the best stuff in sports with host Sean Bingham. His takes are so good, he dropped the mic, but then you wouldn't be able to hear him, and that would suck.
Welcome into STB Sports Take, Simply the Best Sports Podcast. I am your host, Sean Bingham. Thank you for being here, whether you're on YouTube, Spotify, Apple, Anchor, Google, wherever you're watching or listening. Thank you. Please hit that subscribe button. It means a lot to me. Be sure to check out the description. As always, in the description, I will mark out the exact timing at which I hit different segments, different topics. So if you guys want to skip ahead, skip back, I will not be offended. I just want you to get the content you want. So let's dive right in. A lot to talk about today in the NBA. I had this whole thing. I was going to just go after the Nets. They sat KD. They sat LaMarcus Aldridge. They sat Blake Griffin. And they're already down James Harden, and it's a big game against the Philadelphia 76ers. They're tied for first in the East, and they sit three of their stars, and I'm sick of it, and I'm ready to go off on them, and I'm going to. But before I do that, we have crazy breaking news out of the NBA we have to discuss first that is directly related to this, and that is that LaMarcus Aldridge has retired. Very shockingly, very abruptly, LaMarcus Aldridge has retired from the NBA. He's 35 years old, and he put out this letter. I'll put it on the screen for those on YouTube. He put, "Today, I write this letter with a heavy heart. My last game I played while dealing with an irregular heartbeat. Later on that night, my rhythm got even worse, which really worried me even more. The next morning, I told the team what was going on, and they were great getting me to the hospital and getting me checked out. Though I'm better now, what I felt with my heart that night was still one of the scariest things I've experienced. With that being said, I've made the difficult decision to retire from the NBA. For 15 years, I've put basketball first, and now it is time to put my health and family first. I'm thankful for everything this game has given me, the great memories including all the ups and the downs, and the friendships I've made and will keep with me forever. I thank Portland for drafting a skinny Texas kid and giving him a chance. The city of Portland has given me some unforgettable years. They will always remain in my heart. I want to thank the Spurs for letting me into the family and giving me 5 fun years. Last but not least, I want to thank Brooklyn. You wanted me for me. In a game that's changing so much, you asked me to come and just do what I do, which was good to hear. I'm sorry it didn't get to last long, but I've definitely had fun being a part of this special group. You never know when something will come to an end, so make sure you enjoy it every day. I can truly say I did just that. LA." Wow. LaMarcus Aldridge retired from the NBA. Irregular heartbeat. Scary thing. Very scary thing. So, a couple takeaways from this, because we're not just here to report the news. You can get that on Twitter. Here's what I take away from this. A couple things. One, very well written by LaMarcus Aldridge. He's had a fantastic career. He's a great player. He was a key part on successful teams everywhere he went. Portland was successful with him. San Antonio was successful with him. Brooklyn, he only had a few games there, but he was going to be a key piece on likely a championship team. But everywhere he went, he was successful. He was consistent. Fantastic career. Very well written. This is a very scary thing. We've heard those horror stories of guys collapsing on the court and dying. I mean, it's happened before. This is not irregular. I mean, it is. I shouldn't say that. It is irregular, but it's not completely unheard of, right? Like, it has happened before. So I see where he's coming from. You're 35. You've had a great career. You've made tons of money. And now it's time to put health and family first. You can't argue with that. You cannot argue with that. I totally respect it. I get where he's coming from, and I respect it. So that's my first takeaway. Now for a few fun takeaways from this, a few little breakdowns from this. He clearly loves the Blazers the most. Very clearly. We've known that all along. He didn't want to leave. He's always wanted to go back, and you can see it in the language there. Like, that's where his heart is. He even says, "It'll always hold a special place in my heart." Well, he doesn't say any of that about the Spurs. And he actually says, "Thanks for 5 fun years." That's all he says about San Antonio. Thanks for 5 fun years. Well, he actually is in his 6th season with San Antonio this year. Would have been his 6th season. And he played half the season there in San Antonio. So really it was 6 seasons. He kind of just pretended it didn't exist, though. So he says 5 fun years, which is actually a little bit less than he actually played there. That's all he says. Doesn't say holds a special place in my heart. Then he goes on and talks even more lovingly about Brooklyn, who he only played 5 games for, and he talks more lovingly about them than he did about San Antonio. So he clearly didn't like San Antonio. We've known that all along. And then he says to Brooklyn, you just wanted me for me. You wanted me to come and do my thing, which was really good to hear. Which tells me he wasn't hearing that in San Antonio and from Greg Popovich. I think he had a pretty awful relationship in San Antonio with Greg Popovich and the Spurs. I think he wanted out, and it kind of just screams that in this letter, I feel like. It's just the language says, I love Portland. I didn't like San Antonio. Brooklyn was going to be cool, and it just was short-lived. That's what I get from this. So that's one takeaway. Sad he didn't get to go back to the Blazers because there was talk of that all along. It didn't happen. Maybe he changes his mind. That wouldn't be totally out of the question either if he lets a year go by and his heart just feels fine the whole time. And his family's like, hey, go play one more season in Portland and retire a Blazer. Maybe that happens. We'll see. Okay, the other thing I want to talk about, the other takeaway from this, it's kind of a bummer that a guy that has had such a great career, he's 35, he's still a contributor, he still was going to be a key piece on this Nets team, and he was poised to finally win a championship. But it wasn't going to be a garbage championship that wouldn't count, really. I mean, I get it, it's a mega super team, and he would have been the fourth option at best. He would have been the fourth option on this team offensively. And really the fourth best player. I mean, that was a big pickup they made. So it wasn't going to be a garbage championship, like a throwaway, like when it's not quite to the level of when Karl Malone went to the Lakers. It's similar, but not quite to that level. And he could have gotten a ring as a real contributor. And it's a shame that won't happen. Now, maybe they give him a ring if they win the title, but he only played 5 games there. So even if they gave him one, it wouldn't count as an NBA championship. There's no way you could count that. So he retires titleless, and that will always be the case unless he unretires and wins like a legitimate title, right? So that's a shame because he really had a good chance this year, a very, very high chance of winning an NBA title as a key contributor. Okay, next takeaway. Is he a Hall of Famer? Okay, now this is a very fun question, and I kind of got, I had a few Patriot fans come after me for my podcast a couple days ago about Julian Edelman not being a Hall of Famer, and I'm sorry, but he's not, and that is not hating. I love how people say, oh, you're such a hater. And not just to me, but to anyone that does anything to just give real true analysis of a player or a team. I'm not hating on Julian Edelman. I said he's a great player on an even greater team, and I stand by that, and I dare you to argue with it. He was not some massively key, exponentially important component. They were proven to just replace guys everywhere except with Tom Brady, right? And his numbers speak for themselves. He's not a Hall of Famer. A great player on an even greater team. Was a contributor, was a key member. Is he a Pro Football Hall of Famer? No, of course not. And I don't know if you saw, but LaShawn McCoy must have listened to my podcast because the next day he had an almost identical quote, and he was like, nah, man, come on, Hall of Fame? He was a great player on a great team, but Hall of Fame? Nah, come on, man. That's what he said. That's LaShawn McCoy. So, okay. So is LaMarcus Aldridge a Hall of Famer? He's much closer than Julian Edelman for a couple of reasons. One, much better regular season stats. He doesn't have the title, which Julian Edelman had. Again, they're totally different sports, but just to explain myself. But the bigger thing is the Hoop Hall is much easier to get into. And I wish it wasn't like that. I wish the Pro Basketball Hall of Fame I wish they would separate it out into different, because football is just football. It's American football, and there's really, that's the Hall of Fame. Basketball, they take into account collegiate players, women's basketball, men versus men's basketball, even international basketball. And I wish they would differentiate it. I wish there was an NBA specific Hall of Fame where it's only NBA people, period. But they don't. So it is easier to get into the Pro Basketball Hall of Fame. So there's a good chance LaMarcus Aldridge gets in for that reason, combined with his regular season stats. For his career, he averaged 19.4 points per game, 8.2 rebounds. He was a 7-time All-Star, 3-time All-NBA third team, 2-time All-NBA second team. So to me, he's not Hall of Fame worthy, but he's right there. He's right there on the fringe where it would tip either way. He never made an all-defensive team, first, second, or third. Never once did he make an all-defensive first, second, or third team. He never won an NBA championship. He never won an MVP. He never even made it to the NBA Finals. So you take all those things into account, and it leans towards no. I think he does not belong in the Hall of Fame. But he did have a long career. His numbers are actually pretty solid at 19.4 and 8.2. He was an All-Star 7 times. His PER is 61st in NBA history, which is actually surprisingly high. And his defensive win shares are 88th in NBA history, his career defensive win shares. But, again, he never made an all-defensive first, second, or third team. So don't be totally fooled by the defensive win shares stat, because it can be misleading at times, and it appears this might be one of those times. But I think LaMarcus Aldridge is right there on the fringe. Very, very close to being a Hall of Famer. I could see it go either way. My personal opinion is no, he is not Hall of Fame worthy. I think the Hall of Fame should be reserved for guys, and it's tough because this guy's going through this heart issue, although he did say he's fine. That's another takeaway. He said he's fine. He said he's totally fine. He's fine now. He feels fine. I'm sure he'll get more tests, but to me, it sounds like he's totally cleared to play, and he's just choosing, I'm done. And that's fine. That's his. I respect that. But I don't want to be prisoner of the moment and be like, yeah, Hall of Fame because he got sick, Did he deserve it? And I think that he did not. I think that Hall of Fame should be reserved for MVPs, NBA champions, at least first team All-NBA once or twice, and he didn't get it even once. It needs to be reserved for the truly best of the best, the Top Gun. It needs to be Top Gun, the Mavericks and the Icemans of the NBA. And I don't think that LaMarcus Aldridge was that. I think that if we were to create an NBA Top Gun, he wouldn't make it. If you're looking at the very greatest players of all time, LaMarcus Aldridge isn't there. He's not. He's a fantastic talent. He was a great athlete. Compared to the average human, he's one of the greatest of all time. But compared to the average Hall of Famer, I don't think he belongs. That's my personal opinion. So then that begs the question, should Portland retire his jersey? Because that would be the next step, right? Now, Damian Lillard sure thinks so, and here's what he had to say just this morning on Jalen and Jacoby.
All right, man, it's time for the Blazers to retire number 12, man. He had an amazing career in the Trailblazer uniform. I think everybody was expecting him to return, and, he ended up leaving, and it was kind of like, people felt some type of way about it. But there's no denying the kind of career he had in Portland and what he meant to this city. So I think that's the proper respect, to retire that jersey because of, who he was and what he did for this organization.
You hear that, Blazers? Time to retire LaMarcus Aldridge's number.
Okay, so his boy Damian Lillard sticking up for him, saying it's time for Portland to retire number 12. Well, here's my take on that. Portland's a small market. Portland doesn't have a ton of history. If this was the Lakers or the Celtics, there'd be literally a 0% chance that his jersey would get retired. But it's not. It's not the Lakers. It's not the Celtics. It's the Portland Trail Blazers. And so I would say they probably will retire his jersey. He was drafted second overall. He played there for 9 seasons. He averaged his same, great stats of 19 and change points per game, 8, nearly 9 rebounds per game. They made the playoffs. He was an all-star, I think 4 times. Yeah, 4 times with the Blazers. So should they retire his jersey? Yeah, probably. I think they probably will. I don't know that they should, but again, with lack of tradition and history and it's kind of like the Utah Jazz. I'm a Jazz fan, so I feel like I can say this. The Jazz have retired numbers where I'm like, really? I don't know if Jeff Hornacek is exactly a guy that we want to, Jeff Hornacek was a great player, and we did go to the finals twice with him. But I don't know if it's jersey retired level of play, and I don't know, there's other things that franchise can take into account. I think it would be a nice gesture. I don't think they have the tradition and the history to say no way, because it's like, well, Portland, whose numbers are you retiring, And so, yeah, I think they probably will retire his jersey. I think he probably will not make the Hall of Fame. I do think it's like a coin flip because the hoop hall is easier to get into. I just don't think he belongs in the Hall of Fame, but I will give him jersey retirement. Statue, no. We'll save that for Damian Lillard. Jersey retirement, yes. So there's my takeaways on LaMarcus Aldridge. Great player, great career. Nothing to be anything but proud of with his career. Probably could have won a ring this year, but I think he made a wise decision to follow his instincts of like, you know what, there's a lot more to life than winning an NBA title, and I've got hopefully 50 plus years left, and I want to be able to live those and not have a heart condition And so I want to go enjoy it with my family. So congratulations to LaMarcus Aldridge on a great, great career. Okay, now back to this Nets team who is now without him. We'll see who they go pick up in free agency. Maybe a guy comes out of retirement to get a ring with the Nets. But they sit KD. It's a big game. It's on ESPN. It's nationally televised. And they sit Kevin Durant. They sit Blake Griffin. Now we know why they sat LaMarcus Aldridge, so I'm not going to complain about that. But why are these guys sitting? Why? They're sitting because they want to, because they're scared of getting hurt, so to speak. But isn't it interesting how these guys sit so you see this all the time. A game that we're really looking forward to. Maybe it's a game against a guy's former team, KD back against the Thunder or something like that, or a big rivalry on national television where it's kind of like there's a lot more to lose for these guys, and they sit. All of a sudden, their load management kicks in when Kawhi has to go back to San Antonio. I mean, it's ridiculous. So why is load management kicking in now for Kevin Durant against the 76ers on a nationally televised game with first place in the East up for grabs? I'm so sick of it. The networks need to crack down. The networks are paying billions of dollars for these guys to play basketball for us fans, and they don't do it. If I was the networks, I'd be like, guys, this is enough. This is enough. Enough's enough. This is not the product we paid for. It's like ordering something online and they give you like I'm looking at drones right now. I'll use a drone example, okay? I'm looking at drones right now. And DJI has a variety of drones. This is such a ridiculous comparison, but I'm going to do it. DJI has a variety of drones, okay? They just came out with this new Mavic Air, blah, 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 whatever it is. And some of them have like way better cameras, way better range where the drone can fly way further. They're way better in the wind, all these different things. And so there's different price points, right? It would be like I paid for the top end, best of the best drone, and then DJI ships me their $400 mini, that's like the total entry level camera and drone, right? And it's like, okay, yeah, I get that this is a drone, but it's not the drone that I paid for, right? And that's how the networks should feel. Like, okay, yeah, this is the NBA, this is the Brooklyn Nets, but it's not the Nets team that we paid for. We paid for Kevin Durant, we paid for Kyrie Irving, we paid for Blake Griffin, James Harden. James Harden's hurt, we get that. But what about these other guys? What's their excuse? Why is Blake Griffin not playing? Why is Kevin Durant not playing? I get they played the day before, but it was an afternoon game, so they really had like a day and a half to get right. And you're NBA athletes. You're getting paid tens of millions of dollars to play basketball. Play basketball. I think the networks need to crack down. If I'm TNT, if I'm ESPN, if I'm those are the two major ones, right? ABC owns ESPN, so it's all kind of the same there. If I'm one of these networks, I crack down and I say, look, guys, enough's enough. Stephen A sounded off on him. Stephen A really went off on him yesterday, just on his Instagram. And I'm with him. Play basketball. That's what you're paid to do. That's what the fans are paying for that go to the games, which right now there's not many fans that can go to the games, but there are some. And there were fans there, and they were shouting, they were chanting, KD sucks, KD sucks. And the Sixers won the game, by the way. And a couple takeaways from that game we're going to get into, but they've got to do something about this. The stars have to play. And maybe the NBA needs to alter their schedule. Maybe they need to lengthen the season so there's not as many back-to-backs. It looks like the back-to-back is becoming something where you can just sit no matter what. And isn't it funny that only the stars need this load management? Only Kevin Durant and Blake Griffin and Kawhi Leonard and Paul George and Kawhi Leonard also sat yesterday, by the way. And isn't it interesting that only the stars need this load management? Only the stars can't handle back-to-back. Only the stars need this time off after playing a game the day before. But if you're even like the third best player on your team, fourth best player on your team, you better be on that court, right? Unless you're a superstar, you can't take time off. And I think it's ridiculous. I think it's totally ridiculous. It's a horrible double standard. It's totally weak on their part. Maybe they're scared. I think there's a good chance they're scared there's just too much to lose, right? It's like, well, I don't want to play on national television against these guys. They're really good. And I played yesterday and I'm a little bit sore and I got nothing to gain here. And I got everything to lose. I don't want the media to talk bad about me. This generation's just so soft. They really are just so soft. And I'm tired of it. And I think the networks need to crack down and put something in place that says, look, these guys need to play or we're not paying for that game. We will pay a fraction unless there can be an actual medical report. I don't know what level they have to get to. It's ridiculous that we even have to do this. You'd think they'd want to play. You'd think they'd want to go up against the number one team in the East. It's the freaking best two teams in the Eastern Conference facing off against each other and for a potential rivalry and a chance for the number one seed in the NBA playoffs. You'd think they would want to play, but they don't. They'd rather sit because they're scared and they're soft and they're weak, and I'm tired of it. So that's my take on that. Because Paul George and Kawhi Leonard also sat yesterday, and it's just so stupid. It's so stupid. And they're doing the fans wrong. They're doing the networks wrong. And I personally am not going to be one of these talking heads that acts like it's okay, because it's not. It's ridiculous. So, all right. Enough about that. Back to that Nets and Sixers game, though, by the way. Ben Simmons, the Defensive Player of the Year, only gave up 37 points to Kyrie Irving. So good job, Defensive Player of the Year, Ben Simmons. Another takeaway from that, though, is Landry Shamet. He's a player. He's obviously on the Nets, and I remember liking him with the Sixers. He's a guy that doesn't get a ton of minutes, averages like 8 points. He's not talked about, but I've watched several games that he had with the Clippers when he was there, and several games that he's had. I think he played for the Sixers as well, and now for the Nets. And he's a baller. This guy can play, and he's a guy on the Nets. So I'll be interested to see if he gets more minutes. He plays a tough position where he's got Kyrie Irving, James Harden, and Kevin Durant in front of him. They could use another big now that they lost LaMarcus Aldridge, but he's not a big. But he's a baller. He's a baller. So he's a guy to look for coming off the bench, providing a little spark. He looked pretty good. Okay, now we got to talk about Luka's game winner. Luka hits this crazy off-balance, one-handed leaner from three at the buzzer to win the game last night. And it was a little bit lucky, of course. It was like, I mean, you give him that shot. It's not lucky because obviously he's got the skill. It's not like he's just chucking it. You know, he's looking at the hoop and he's doing his best to shoot it. But he's so off-balance and it's so forced and so awkward that it's a type of shot that he probably would make 1 out of 10, you know, if he did it just in an open gym with no defenders even. But he made it, and they win the game, and it's just Luka Doncic, man. Someone called it the Doncic dagger, and I loved it. But here's the clip, by the way.
Got to get it in. Here's Luka. Gets it away. It's good! A Doncic dagger! He wins it three. As he was stumbling, he somehow got it to go. Whether it's a 3 or 2 is remarkable in and of itself. Let's see, was he behind the line? Let's see if he got it off in time. Watch the foot. Oh, yeah, that's a 3, and he got it away in time. That's good. That's a win.
And then you get LeBron James and Damian Lillard tweeting after the game, you know, wow, wow, wow. Come on, Luka Doncic, you ain't serious, man. That's from LeBron. And then Dame just tweets tough. And I think that could have a double meaning here. Damian Lillard could be tweeting, you know, tough, that it's, you know, that's a tough shot. That was pretty dope. It could also mean like tough, like, dang, you're right behind us in the standings and I don't need you winning games, you know, because Portland's just barely ahead of Dallas in the standings and they don't want that 7 spot. Nobody wants that 7 spot because you got to do that dreaded play-in game. Nobody wants that 7 spot. Everyone wants to be 6 or higher, which makes me kind of like the play-in game. I know I talked bad about it yesterday, but for that reason alone, I like it. It's like if you're trying to push to be 6 or higher instead of 7, that's kind of cool. Okay, other takeaways from the NBA. The Nuggets looked pretty good in their first game without Jamal Murray. Michael Porter Jr., that's a guy to look out for. The Nuggets won yesterday. They beat the Heat. The Heat are kind of underachieving this year, I feel like. But Michael Porter Jr. is a guy that I felt like was going to really come on strong. And I'm trying to look it up right now. I had it here somewhere. There it is. Michael Porter Jr. had 25 points, 10 rebounds, 3 blocks. This is a guy, he obviously does not play the same position as Jamal Murray, but he's going to get a lot more playing time and a lot more offensive looks now because Jamal Murray's out. He's going to get so many more shots up now. I think he's a superstar in the making. For sure, I should say a star in the making. Superstar, we got to reserve for that upper echelon, Kevin Durant, LeBron James, you know, Anthony Davis, James Harden type players. But Michael Porter Jr. is a star in the making, and he showed it very well last night, his first game without Jamal Murray, 25, 10, and 3 blocks. He's going to see the ball a lot more. He's going to see more minutes on the court, the ball in his hands more shots. I think you're going to see a star in the making here in Michael Porter Jr. So take a look at that and keep an eye on that. I mean, okay, another thing. Russell Westbrook, another triple-double. Wizards win again. Will they make the playoffs? I don't know. They could sneak into that 10 seed and get that play-in game. But the thing I want to talk about here, though, is Russell Westbrook is like a walking triple-double, and nobody cares. Like, literally nobody cares. It's like his 24th of the season. He's got second most all-time. The guy is literally a walking triple-double, and nobody cares. Anybody else gets a triple-double, and it's headline news. The whole NBA world is talking about it. You know, Jokic got a triple-double last night. It was talked about heavily. Westbrook gets one, and it's like, oh, yeah, and Russell Westbrook, by the way, had like 25, 14, and 11. It's like, nobody cares. The guy's a walking triple-double. I'm a Westbrook fan. I know that's like unpopular, but I like him. I like the passion he plays with. His skill set is incredible. He just needs to get a better outside shot, but he's actually a decent shooter. He's just not a great shooter, and he's not a good outside shooter. But like his mid-range is pretty darn good. He can get to the rack. He just needs a better outside shot. This guy, he's for sure a Hall of Famer, right? And I'm rooting for him. I just think it's funny that he can go out and get a triple-double. He had 25 points, 15 rebounds, 11 assists last night, and it was just kind of like, ho-hum, nobody cares. No one's going to talk about it. And just a few seasons ago, he was MVP for doing that a bunch. And then after he's done it 3-4 seasons, this will be his 4th season of his career averaging a triple-double, and it's just kind of like, meh. I remember when it was like Oscar Robertson. It was like this folklore of like Oscar Robertson, the Big O. He averaged a triple-double for an entire season. And me and my buddies were like, no freaking way. Like a whole season? Oh, it must have been easier back then, right? Like the competition must have sucked. Well, it was like that big of a deal. Well, now we've got a guy in today's modern NBA averaging a triple-double season after season after season. The only season he didn't in the last 5 was the season with the Rockets when he had James Harden as a teammate. But the 3 seasons before that, at OKC, he averaged a triple-double. Now this season with the Washington Wizards, averaging triple-double. And he will finish the season with a triple-double average. His 4th time doing it. Nobody cares. Nobody talks about it. Didn't make the All-Star game even. Certainly won't get any MVP votes. Probably won't even make 3rd-team All-NBA. Averaging a triple-double. Incredible. All right. Do I want to wrap up or do I want to move forward? Okay, going to wrap up with this. Alex Rodriguez is now part owner of the Minnesota Timberwolves, and Anthony Edwards, their star rookie, who probably will win Rookie of the Year because LaMelo Ball got injured, did not know who he was. He was asked in an interview if he was a fan. And this guy, Anthony Edwards, is a kid. It's actually funny to watch him get interviewed. He's actually a kid, and he is. He's very young, and he was asked if he knew or if he was a fan of Alex Rodriguez, and he literally said, "A fan? What do you mean? Like I don't know who that is." Alex Rodriguez is one of the greatest baseball players of all time, and he's not that old. Like he's only maybe 10 years, removed from being a superstar baseball player. And Anthony Edwards literally had no clue who he was. They had a funny exchange there on Instagram or Twitter. I think it was Instagram, but just a funny thing. Anthony Edwards, know your sports, bruh. I know you're good. You're a star in the making, but you should know who Alex Rodriguez is. All right, guys, that's all the time I have for today. I will see you probably not tomorrow, actually, because I'm going out of town, but I will see you Monday. I am out. Peace.
Thanks for hanging with Simply the Best Sports Take. Don't forget to subscribe to this podcast and check out STB Sports Take.com. Simply the best in sports.